Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to the 10-hour training on how to become a tech-aware leader. I intend to put at least one part per week, typically on the weekend. But last week I could not do that because I was a bit under the weather, so I could not get to it. So first of all, thank you for your patience. And today, what we're going to do in this part 4 is looking at the customer and the change the customer has to go through using the product and how technology can help in understanding the customer as well as what a customer goes through. But before we do that, as usual, let's review part 3 as to what we covered in part 3 briefly and then move on to part 4. So give me a moment to share. Okay, so the part 4 is about the customer and how do you understand the customer's journey, customer's experience and expectations, how do you design for those using technology. But let's first review part 3. Okay, so in part 3 was mainly about how do you envision, how do you create a vision and execute to that vision. And first of all, we looked at ambition. What are the ambitions of the organization or the idea that you are bringing to the table? So there were 3 types of ambitions we looked at, especially for organizations. One was, of course, growth ambitions. Then the second one was exit ambitions around valuation and things like that. And the third one was about survival ambitions. So once you know what mode your organization is in, whether it's growth, thinking about exit, thinking about survival, then the ambitions become clear and how they influence the visioning of the idea and how your idea sits in the context of this whole ambition of the business. And then we looked at to analyze the tailwinds and the headwinds and what your organization does best and worst to figure out what context is in which you are bringing this idea in and what are the relevant spaces you can look at for mining the idea. We looked at this tool called the BWTH tool. So best, worst, tailwinds and headwinds. So it was the tailwinds, the headwinds, best and the worst. So that gives you 4 different spaces to play in. The left-hand side top would be amplification. The left-hand side bottom would be leveraging. The left-hand side right would be fixing, problem fixing, and sorry, the right-hand side bottom and the right-hand side top would be continuing as is because you're already good at what you're doing. Then we also looked at another tool, which is the 2 triangles, the why and the what, the upward pointing triangle and the downward pointing triangle, which is identifying the problem. So once you figured out what's the context, then what's the area that in which you want to contribute, then you need to figure out the why and the what. And we looked at 3 different elements for each of these why and the what. Essentially around what are the, around the why, what are the trends that you're seeing in the particular industry in which your business is operating? What are the people that, this idea would affect? Why would they care about this? And the pains and gains that your idea is trying to solve for those people. And again, remember, all the things, all the tools that we talk about, all the frameworks we talk about here are not just for businesses or enterprises, but also for within the business, within an enterprise. If you have an idea, if you're an employee and you're affecting the lives of your colleagues, all these are relevant and all these can be used. So I might be switching between referring to each of these contexts, whether it's within the business or external customers, but I've made sure that all the frameworks and all the concepts that I'm talking about here are relevant for each of those scenarios. And for the what, we looked at, what is the value that you're providing, how big is the idea, and then finally, and more also very importantly, are you passionate about the idea? So once you figure out these two, the why and the what, then you're zeroing on to the idea. Then we also looked at how change is what you're bringing to the table for the customer when you provide a solution to a problem, or when you provide a product to be used. You're actually asking the customer to change, and the change is a tough thing, and that's something that needs to be kept in mind. And we'll talk more about that in today's conversation or video as well. And then also, what is the challenge you're facing in executing to this idea? A lot of times we face the challenge. A lot of us have good ideas. There's no dearth of good ideas out there, but we always face these challenges. And whenever I talk to people and say, hey, you've got this great idea, why are you not implementing it? The various challenges people come up with. It could be like cultural, it could be resources, or it could be previous experiences with failure. And the way the organization also treats failure affects the way people would want to take an idea and risk their career, risk their current standing, right? And then finally, of course, also confidence. The level of confidence they have in themselves, not just in manifesting the idea, but various parts of it, right? The technology. Oh, I'm not good with technology, or can I pull this off? I'm just one person. I don't have a team, etc., etc. So those are some of the things we looked at. We also looked at some of the key concepts and ideas that are important for envisioning. One of them was that looking at what is the job that needs to be done that you're trying to solve or providing a product for. I think there was an example that I used about skateboard. So you could be selling skateboard and the rivets and the wheels that go with the skateboard, etc., to the customer. But what you're actually selling is the joy of skateboarding. I think there was somebody who said, you're not selling cameras, you're selling the means of making great photography or great photographers, right? So that's jobs to be done. Jobs to be done was one concept we looked at. We also looked at some tools that you can use to figure out these pains and gains that you're trying to, the pains that you're solving for the customer and the gains that you're providing to the customer. So we looked at some tools like a value proposition canvas. We looked at a lean model canvas, lean canvas. So those are some of the things we looked at. We also looked at agile methodology, which is very popular nowadays. We'll also look at another perspective of the agile methodology in today's conversation as well. So we finally ended the last part with customer expectations, right? We looked at or customer experience, if you will. We looked at various aspects or advances in customer experience, how there are various organizations. We looked at some examples of how various organizations are looking at customer experience and changing customer experience, right? So we're going to expand on that in today's conversation. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to switch over to the PowerPoint slide. So 1 moment. Okay, so now let's dive into part 4. So like I said, part 4 is mainly about the customer and the customer experience. So now let us look at how to leverage technology in understanding and working with the customer. We'll discuss some tools and techniques. We'll also look at how you can use certain frameworks and certain ideas to look at the customer experience and designing the customer experience, and also organizing your thinking process around the customer experience. Before we go further, I want to leave you with a thought, and this is relevant for our conversation today. The thought is about two concepts, the concepts of abstraction and empathy. So this is something I believe. The opposite of empathy is not apathy, it's actually abstraction. So to explain these concepts further with a metaphor, abstraction is like a documentary film. It sticks to the facts, it looks at generalizations, It looks at the overall contours of the story that it is trying to tell, and it captures the essence of the story. And it looks at all those things. And that's what a documentary does. And abstraction, in my view, is like the documentary. It's looking at something in a more generalized essence kind of fashion, right? Then empathy, which is in my view a counterpoint of abstraction, is more like a movie, feature film, right? It goes deeper into how the characters feel, the characters experience their pains and gains, what their beliefs are, what their values are, what are their point of views, why are they doing what they're doing, all that. So it goes into all that, in a movie. While creating a product, designing a process, we typically wear the hat of a documentary filmmaker, a documentary director, if you will. But the problem occurs when we don't take that hat off, especially while designing customer experiences, and wear the hat of a feature filmmaker, because the customer experience cannot be designed while wearing the hat of an abstraction. You can't look at it as an abstract concept or a process and design for it. You need to go down into the trenches and make your hands dirty and really experience the feelings, the emotions, what the customer touches and feels, and not just the product and the service that they're trying to consume, right? So that's an important distinction between these two concepts of abstraction and empathy. And we'll see why this is the case when it comes to customer experience as we move along our video today. Okay, so churn, we've heard this word quite a bit. The churn in the business, especially when it comes to cloud businesses, we keep hearing this word a lot. But churn happens in every business, right? Every business has a natural churn of customers. Customers moving from the business to probably competitors to something else and abandoning the product that they're using. And a lot of the organizations are now used to measuring churn, right? So if the churn is higher for you, then you want to know why and investigate the reason so that you can understand and adjust your processes, both internal, external processes, as well as evolve your product, right? So churn becomes an important aspect because obviously, selling to the same customer is much more cost effective than gaining a new customer. I think the cost ratio for selling to an existing customer or gaining the new customer is multifold. I think it's somewhere between 3 to 5x, right? So obviously it's more economical to sell to the same customer. One good indicator of whether the customer is liking what you produce or service or provide for them, more importantly, how you do it, is the metric of repeat customers. Are you getting repeat customers? Do you have customers coming to you and buying more things, or more of the same thing? Are they repeat customers? So repeat customers is an excellent indicator of are you really giving what the customers like, and are you giving it in a way they like it? Is your process also giving that experience that they really like? But it could also be the case that you are providing a one and done business, like a product that they use once and that's it, like a washing machine. Like they buy a washing machine and that's it. They're not going to buy a washing machine for another, 15, 20 years maybe. My washing machine is going on for the last 20 years. So that's a one and done business, right? But if you have other products, are they coming to buy other products? So that's one good indicator. The other indicator is how many of your customers, especially when you're in a one and done business, how many of your customers are referred versus they are coming to you because of something else, because of advertisements, etc. How many of your customers are being referred by existing customers is another good indicator of, are you doing the right thing? And in my view, if that ratio of referred customers to the customers coming to other means is less than 10%, then your customer experience may need relooking and repair. And we know that the world is full of lousy customer experiences. All of us are customers to something or other, and we know that customer experience is not always good across most products we consume or services we consume. So a question to ask for yourself is, how much does your customer experience matter to your customers? Does it really matter? Do you keep the promise that your marketing trumpets? Like your marketing could be saying something, but is that promise kept? Do your customers care how much effort it takes? Right? Because every company's bad customer experience is another competitor's opportunity. Competitors are going to leverage that. And a lot of surveys indicate that most businesses are now thinking about customer experience as a differentiator. They're looking at it and saying, hey, it's going to be a differentiator. Because most of the ideas get copied. Like there could be a Uber, then there's an Ola, right? The idea is copied. Netflix is a great example of how customers are jumping ship because there's so much competition out there. So, I think recently Netflix has been in news for losing a lot of customers for the first time in their entire history. And the investors are not happy at all. And they are losing subscriptions and losing revenue and losing profits, right? So if you don't provide a great customer experience, your customers are going to move on and go to something else. And hence customer experience becomes really, really important. And one of the things we looked at in, I think, part 2 is how to develop the customer first and then the product. The customer comes before the product. And that's where the concept of the customer centricity comes in. And a lot of organizations talk about customer centricity, but you can ask yourself this question looking at your process and looking at your product or services and say, am I really committing to seeing everything I do from the perspective of the customer who's funding it? And am I taking appropriate actions to improve and remedy if there is feedback coming my way, right? So that's what customer centricity is all about, as simply as it is. Right? And like I said earlier, this is relevant not just for enterprises, but also internal idea development, internal customers. A lot of us work in organizations where there are internal customers, and we are implementing software, we're implementing products, we're creating products, we're coming up with ideas to serve our internal customers. And they are like, IT does that all the time for a lot of its business stakeholders in an organization. I think the concepts we're discussing today is relevant in that scenario as well. And like I mentioned earlier. So technology can help build and manage this customer experience, this ethos of customer experience or customer centricity across the organization. We are at a point in history where we have a lot of information about everything and everyone that interacts with us. More so if we are a business, like customers are no exception. The digital footprint that a customer leaves with an organization is huge. And the data can be mined to derive very useful insights and figure out what are the customers saying about us, what are they experiencing, and is that experience something that we have designed for, or is that experience something that we've not designed for? Is that experience something we desire our customers to have, or is that experience something that we do not desire our customers to have? So those insights can be created by mining the data that the customers are leaving with us. And the data needs to be mined and insights created in a easily digestible form, especially for a lot of the non-data savvy departments that we have that work with various processes in the organization. So if you are the one who owns this idea, then it becomes important that this aspect is taken care of or kept in mind, especially for the high value customer segments, so that you can come up with clear campaign strategies saying, what sort of campaign will help and address the issues that the customer is facing. Like you can take the example of Uber. Uber deals with huge amounts of data to capture the process, and literally they can predict lot of things. Like it could be wait times, it could be different types of customers, or places, or which roads or routes a driver will take, and how, and they leverage that hugely for jacking up their prices. And they know that during certain times and in certain geographies, they face huge amount of traffic, and they're going to jack up the prices and make sure the organization benefits from it. So it's not just for the customer's experience, but also the organization benefits from this mining of this data. And like I said, it's relevant even internally. If, let's say, you're implementing a software for your customers, internal customers, can you provide instrumentation in that software or that product or that idea that will capture the data of usage, right? A lot of times we just implement something and we forget about it. I mean, our go live becomes our target, go live becomes our success criteria, but that doesn't work anymore, because there's a lot of information available and people are very aware, and your projects that you implemented stay with you for a much longer time beyond go live. So even for internal customers, this is extremely relevant to capture that information. And the best place, or the best part of the whole process to capture that information, or design for capturing that information, is during designing the product or creating the product. Nowadays, even for B2B customers, a lot of the cloud products that are out there are pre-designed with the telemetrics, that with the instrumentation that captures this data and mines this data for information and insight. So that becomes extremely important. And as a business, you need to do a lot of things, obviously, right? So it's not just providing or creating the product, and you need to not just design and create the product, but also sell it, ship it, service it, to your customer. Which means there are a lot of internal activities that don't directly add value to the customer, like a finance process, or an internal material movement process, or a purchasing process that doesn't directly add value to the customer. In fact, they might even cause frustrations to the customers. Recently I had an experience with an insurance company. One of the insurance products I had procured had a challenge with my account information. My account information was wrongly entered. Bank account information was wrongly entered by that insurer. I provided the right information, but they entered it wrong. But they came back to me and said, you need to fill this long form and give all this documentation for us to correct this. Now, I was talking to the customer service and I said, this doesn't make sense at all. You are the one who did the data entry incorrectly. And but you're asking me to fill all this form, go through all the pain. Like, they need the form filled, they want me to take the printout, they want me to sign the form, they want me to send them a canceled check of my bank with their bank details, they want me to send them a bank statement, again signed, countersigned, and with dates, etc. And so they were putting me through a lot of pain, and it didn't make sense at all. So I was talking to the customer service, and the customer service guy says, this is our process. This is what we are supposed to do. Without this, your account information will not be updated. And the reason for that they were giving was, we had fraud occur in our company, and some employees with access changed bank account information without proper authorization. And now we are asking our customers to give all this information, even if we have internally made a mistake. I mean, that doesn't make any sense, right? At least from my perspective as a customer. And that completely frustrated me. And I kind of told myself, I don't want to go back to that, right? So your internal processes do affect customers. And especially when they are non-value creating for the customer, they create a lot of frustration. So those are the ones that you might need to focus on when you're looking at the customer journey. So most robust businesses are still around because enough people are happy to pay them money for what they provide, right? So maybe the customer doesn't have a choice, but once they have a choice, and if you're not providing the right experience, they're going to jump ship. So the more you know about the customer's process, be it B2B, B2C, or even internally, the better equipped you are to provide them with that great experience. The customer journey is a tool we'll look at right now. And it's a very simple tool to help you do this. So this is a customer journey tool. It's a very simple tool. If you look at it, it's got two axes. On the left-hand side, it's got you know, 3 states of the customer where you kept a promise, the customer is happy, or you've actually surprised and delighted the customer, so the customer is happy with a pleasant surprise. You've not done something, you've not kept your promise, but it's not too bad, but it's an opportunity waste. That's the second state. The third state is the customer is lost. They had a bad customer experience. And on the columns is all your internal processes. It could be, how did the customer find you? What research did they do before finding you? What was their buying process? What was their paying process? What was the receiving experience? What was the out-of-the-box experience, right? And what was the use experience? How did the fulfillment happen? What was the service like? What was the returns like? All those important processes wherever the customer has a potential interface, even an exceptional interface, like in the case of that insurance agency. It was an exceptional interface I had, but that's a customer service, right? So, so you put yourself in the shoes of the customer. Literally, you make a feature film about the customer. So this is a feature film. This is empathy. This is not abstraction. This is a feature film and not a documentary. So you need to be aware of the moods of the customer when they do these interactions. What are the moods? Are they excited or are they frustrated? Are they hurried? You know, like for example, if I'm shopping for a pair of shoes versus I'm going to a hospital, my onboarding experience and mood is very different. I'm going to buy a shoe, I'm much more relaxed. I'm not hassled. I'm probably even enjoying the process. And I love the service and the time that people are taking to give me that experience. Whereas I'm going to a hospital, I'm extremely anxious, extremely frustrated with all the processes. So it needs to be as quick as possible. And I need the patient, or if I'm the patient, I need to be cared for as quickly as possible, right? So two different experiences. Like a 5-star hotel versus a roadside eatery. You're going to a 5-star hotel for an experience and you don't mind waiting and enjoying the ambience, versus a roadside eatery, you want to be served very quickly, you just want to eat and get away. So that needs to be kept in mind when you are filling this out and tracking the customer experience. At the bottom, you can see some of the blurbs that can give you some ideas on pre-purchase stages and post-purchase stages, etc. I'll put out these links and also some templates that you can use to map the customer journey. Right? So finally, it will look something like this. You have the details of the customer, the scope, the goals that you want to get out of this, what insights you want to derive. And then you have the stages, and you'll map the experience. One of the few things that you need to note in this map, especially the curves going up and down, and you will have curves going up and down from being a good experience to a really frustrating experience, is the next stage is affected by the previous stage's experience. So if my research has gone well, that's fine. I move on to, let's say, trying to buy it. But if my buying experience is not great, then I'm not going to proceed further. So the next phase of the experience in the columns would be affected by how the experience of the customer has been previously. So that's something you need to be really, really careful about. And that becomes a design criteria in the process. So let's say you have an important milestone of the customer paying or moving forward from the adding to the cart to paying for the product. That's a key milestone. Then the previous experience needs to be really delightful. Otherwise, the next one is not going to happen. And this is where the form versus function becomes an important conversation to have internally, right? Is usability is, especially at all the customer interfaces, is an important aspect, not just the problem being solved, not just the solution being provided, but also how I'm experiencing it. For example, like I received a recent package from a supplier that I was buying from, and it was a fragile product, so I could understand that they packed it securely, but they packed it so securely with multiple layers of tape and all that stuff. It took me very sharp knives and almost 15-20 minutes of cutting through all those tapes and cardboard to get to what I wanted. And that was a very frustrating experience. So here the customer was very worried about securing the fragile object, but completely forgot that I need to get it out of that box. I need to get it out of all those bandages and packaging. And that's an experience I'll be having, right? Not the person shipping it. So that's, I think, a good example of how does the out of the box experience feel like. And I think some of the organizations like Amazon and Apple do a great job at it. I mean, Amazon's frustration-free packaging solves this problem. But Apple goes even further to not just avoid the frustration, but also give a sense of joy in the packaging. Like literally, whatever Apple products I buy, I store the packaging because it's such a delight to open that packaging. And even I'm told that the package designers at Apple even pay attention to the sound the box makes while it drops from the top lid, right? So that's probably extreme, but at least you can make it frustration free. So that's an important aspect to consider. Saying how's the out of the box experience. So the tool that we just talked about is a good tool to use, saying, where are the customer interfaces and how are the experience of the customer at each of those interfaces. So I'd like you to do that exercise, maybe pause the video or do it later, but use the template, use that process with the moods of the customer as the rows and the processes that they are going through sequentially as columns, and live the life of the customer, live like the entire life cycle of the customer. And what are their moods? How are they experiencing it? What are the experiences? What are they going through while interacting with your process? So in order to give a good experience, we talked about the customer journey, but also what are the things that you should focus on? In my view, there are three things you should focus on. One is frictionless transactions. All the transactions are smooth and they don't cause any problems. So that is not causing a problem. The second thing is great service, better than the competitors. So one, you've not caused a problem. Now you take it to the next level, saying, I'm not just not causing you a problem or giving you a frictionless, smooth service, a smooth transaction, but even delighting you. I mean, creating a delight. And of course, it can be for certain customer segments, certain parts of the transaction, which are super important for you, but that's the next level. And the third level, of course, is partnering with the customer, really making the customer a partner. And this becomes super important in, when you're creating an idea, manifesting an idea internally. Are you able to partner with your customer? Can IT partner? Is IT truly partnering with HR, or are they saying, I'm just implementing something and thank you very much. We had our go live and we had our after go live party. So technology can help you in all the three aspects. The process we talked about of mapping the customer experience, you can figure out, especially in part the frictionless transactions and providing a great, delightful service, you can figure that out. Partnership is something that you need to work separately on. That's something you need to evolve. Innovating, co-innovating with the customer is something that you need to think through. A customer experience map will not give you that answer. So a great example of that is the Procter and Gamble. They realized way back in 2000s, early 2000s, I think, that they need to, they kind of research and development investments, the ROI had plateaued. I think it plateaued around 35% or something, and they were not able to make any headway beyond that. The internal R&D was not working anymore. So they moved from R&D to C&D, which is connect and develop. So what they did was they onboarded customers. They started onboarding customers as well as suppliers to co-innovate, to develop things that will solve the problems of Procter and Gamble. So they embraced what is called as open innovation, creating a community of innovation. That means you need to expose, you need to open up certain parts of your business to your suppliers and customers. And you also need to talk about, what are the relevant areas that you want them to work with. So, and that's what they did. That's what Procter and Gamble did. If you go to the website, you can see that they have certain areas that they want the customers and suppliers to contribute towards in terms of new ideas, in terms of opportunity spaces that are relevant for them. And they are open for the solutions that the suppliers and customers will provide. And the innovation team sitting in the background, I want to pick those ideas, quickly experiment with them and take those ideas and convert them into products, process improvements, internal ideas, internal solutions, etc. So that's another the next level of partnering, which is opening up your innovation doors to the entire community that you're working with. So your business essentially does only two things. It solves the pains of the customer and provides some gains for the customer. And we know what are the decisions the customers are taking, what are the decisions we need to take. And a lot of the decisions the customers are taking in those interfaces that they have with the business are emotional. These are emotional decisions. So it becomes extremely important and clear that the customer needs to have a certain experience, a certain mood, a certain feeling before they move on to a next stage. They move on to, let's say, a stage of buying, stage of paying, stage of engaging, etc. So that's customer experience becomes an important tool. The customer experience and customer journey becomes an important tool to gauge that, to empathize with, and to figure out and design for, beyond just providing the solution to the problems that the customer has. And it also becomes a tool to think about, what next? Okay, now the customer has a product that is solving the problem. How will they keep being engaged with you? How will they partner with you? What will motivate them to be your partner, right? And that's where keeping the customer at the center of your business decisions, be it internal and external. Customer development before product development becomes key concepts or key aspects to keep in mind. And the thinking is about, I'm not selling cameras, but I'm selling, this experience that helps my customers become great photographers. Am I improving the life of my customer? And that becomes an important thing to keep in mind. And that brings us to, the open innovation, systemic innovation, where you've proven your case, you've onboarded the customer, you provided tools to the customer to co-innovate with you. And that's when something magical happens. You open up doors to, using technology to connect with your customers and suppliers and the entire community to partner with you and co-innovate with you. And a lot of the organizations and industries have been doing this. For example, banking has, been almost a tech industry for a very long time. I think that's one of the industries that embraces technology much more quickly than any industry. They've completely changed the face of banking in the last 30, 40 years. So has travel, and there are a lot of other industries, and now recently, even travel, last mile travel, like cabs and taxis with over the Ubers and the Olas of the world have become technology industries. So it's not just becoming a technology industry, but it's about leveraging technology to create these customer experiences, to create these partnerships that go beyond the walls of an organization and that go beyond the mandate of an idea, just manifesting the idea. That's where technology can become a huge enabler. And how do you go about doing this? I think it's fairly, a process that needs to be worked out. I wouldn't say it's a simple process. It's something that needs to be relevant for the context of the organization, but it can be bucketized into certain aspects. Like you start with an idea, you find some early customers, early partners, but you keep them close. You keep those customers close. You work with them closely, experiment with them, and get their feedback and evolve your product and service. And once you evolve the product and service, then the previous customers might not be liking or wanting what you're providing in your new form, some of them at least. So that means you might have to leave those customers because they are not coming with you on the journey, or you might have to convince them or communicate with them to come along. So there are various ways of handling that. And then you find new partners, new customers, and repeat the whole process. And the objective of this entire process is to create evolution both within the organization and to the product and service that you're providing, and also to the customer. Evolving the customer, making the customer's life better is a part of that process as well. And the other decision you might want to take is, whether you follow a waterfall methodology or agile. And a lot of organizations are pushing agile very aggressively nowadays, but I have an opinion on this. In my view, if you have a clear path on what you're doing, if you are not going to iterate through the process, if you clearly know what you're building, then it's a waterfall because you know it. Agile is when you have a problem, but you don't have a clear solution. You are iterating, you are improving things as you go along, and that's when agile becomes very important. It's also important that, like we talked about in the last video, when you are trying to co-create with across the boundaries, you're getting people from various parts of the organization to work with each other. And also, it's also important when there is change happening continuously, when you're affected by change continuously, and you need to adapt to that change quickly and move on. So that's when agile is important. But if you clearly know what you're developing, then in my view, it's a waterfall. Then the final decision would be, to make technology visible or invisible. Do you want to talk about the technology that you're using to your customers or not? In my view, it's a decision of, is that important for the customer to know? Does the customer care about it? I think a great example is like Adidas or the sneaker makers like Nike. They use a lot of technology. Like recently, Adidas, I think in the past few years, they came out with this sneaker sole called Boost, or material called Boost, that is springy or much more springy in nature, and that's got a lot of chemical innovations. I think they worked with this company called BASF, a chemical company, and they use that material. And there are a lot of technology that went into it, but they don't talk about the technology. They talk about how it benefits the customer, how it improves the bounds of the feet when the customer is using the sneakers and running, how it makes them better runners, not about how great the technology is, right? Versus if you are selling technology, if the product is technology, then of course it needs to be front and center. For example, if you're selling, like Apple has got this entire spectrum. It sells iPads and M1 Max, and it also sells high-end pro devices which are targeted towards people who are leveraging this technology and devices to create content and create products and manifest their ideas. And they are worried about, that spectrum is worried about technology. So the way Apple communicates using for their pro devices is very different than the way it positions its its devices for a regular non-pro user, right? So those are some of the decisions you might have to take from a customer experience point of view, and all those decisions have customer at the center, saying, does the customer care about it? Does it add value to the customer? So that brings us to the end of the video today, part 4, and then we will look at part 5 in the next conversation next week. Till then, thank you. And I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to put the artifacts, exercises, and any links in the description, as well as you can get access to the entire deck by using some of the links in the description. So look out for that in the description. You'll also have some of the chapters, or I'll be doing timestamps on some of the key aspects in the video as well. So if you want to jump to those, you can use the timestamps to do that as well. So thank you for your support, and I hope you had some key takeaways from this entire video. Looking forward to seeing you next week. Thank you.